We're back with another episode of BBB, and finally the WSL is back. We had our opening weekend, and Anita, I don't think there's any better place to start than at the Emirates, where Arsenal took on Manchester City. I seen you were there. I watched live on TV. What did you take of the game?
Wow, Farah, what can I say? I was buzzing for this game. I could not wait to see it, and it did not disappoint. I thought Arsenal started off the brighter, with more energy, the intensity. They showed bravery in the way they were playing. And yeah, to be honest, and I'm probably gonna get criticism for this, but that is the worst I think I've seen Man City play.
Yeah, I would agree.
Do you know what I mean?
I was going to touch on how sloppy they were a bit further in, because I thought they were bad, but I don't know. I mean, if I'm honest, I was a bit surprised by Arsenal's approach to the game. I think if you think of the starting lineup, I know there was a lot of questions around, obviously, Russo and Beth Mead being left out, and obviously, I mean, for me, that was a fantastic tactical decision from Jonas in terms of picking Blackstenius, given the way that Manchester City play. But I thought, you mentioned it there, the intensity that Arsenal played at. I mean, phenomenal, right? I think that was a part. I mean, I might be wrong in terms of how sloppy it made Manchester City with the ball.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that they definitely set their stall out early. They wanted to establish presence. I agree with you in terms of personnel, in terms of Jonas Eidvall's selection. He's obviously assessed, Man City and gone, listen, we can exploit space behind, because they play extremely high line, because, they've been able to do that all season. Last season, they trust the players they have to do that. But they utilize that space really well in the channels. And City, between the fullbacks, centre backs, they just could not cope with it. They kept getting exploited. And I think when you are on top of a team, you gain more confidence, right? So then you are able to get more numbers forward, and they were able to do that.
I mean, obviously we know that Manchester City play with a high line, and probably because they are so good normally in possession and very rarely transition the ball the way they did in that game, in terms of the exposure that happens once once those interceptions happen. I felt certainly in those central areas as well, which normally we know Manchester City controlled the game from Hasegawa in particular. I just felt that Arsenal just pounced on everything. I mean, look, Arsenal give a few possessions away centrally and missed the ball at times, but as you said there, I think Manchester City were very sloppy for a Manchester City team. There was all the talk of, can they get that one step closer and go and win the title this year? I mean, Arsenal have given an unbelievable account, and I mean, if you look at the game as a whole, there was a few incidents within the game. Obviously, the goals we had, Ford's goal disallowed. What was your take on that? Because obviously it was 1-1 at that time.
It was 1-1. It would have been a sort of a momentum shift again for Arsenal to go on, because they had created so many clear-cut chances, and it was a well-taken goal. My main criticism is, of course, the official, the lineswoman. You're thinking, how's she not seeing that? But then on reflection, the way Leia Alexandri is stepping out, she might have just missed it, a split second. And it does happen that quickly without the benefit of VAR, obviously, to look at these situations in retrospect. But I did feel for Arsenal. I did understand that they would have felt hard done by, because they were the ones really, putting pressure on Man City at that point.
Yeah, because obviously Arsenal went 1-0 up with Marnham, and obviously it was that ball. I mean, it come literally a few seconds after that Miedema chance. We see her intercepted in central areas from Kim Little, and it literally come from a build-up. They played out from the back, beat Manchester City's press, and once they did that and got into those wide areas, I mean, obviously Marnham put them 1-0 up. And then Viv, literally probably against the run of play, got a deflection. And then obviously that goal for Arsenal would regain that momentum for them. But yeah, it's difficult, isn't it? I think, we can talk about VAR. It's not in the game. It's not going to be in the game. But if we talk about that VAR, if there was VAR, that would have been ruled onside, right? But then we'll talk about, obviously, then City went 2-1 up. And then we talk about Arsenal's equaliser. Now, there was some controversy around the equaliser and the build-up to the goal, whether Katie McCabe had fouled Chloe Kelly. What was your take on that? Because it was an interesting one.
You know what? When I saw it at the time, I was like, I think I turned to Julie Flaherty and I was like, did you see that? That's a foul. That's a clear foul. She literally just got pummeled to the ground, and then Katie's like sat on her practically. And they've come away with the ball, and it's led to a positive attack, that's gone on to be to be a goal. And I was shocked because I don't think the referee was that far away from the situation. And I'm all for letting games flow. But when there are obvious fouls, you got to call them, especially in games like this where the margins are all fine.
I've probably rewound that clip so many times. I mean, there was no contact on Chloe Kelly, but there was no contact on the ball. And it obviously, in terms of that momentum Chloe Kelly would have had, if she hadn't had that slight kind of contact, then, do you know what I mean? She probably would have got away with the ball. The fact that Katie McCabe has obviously gone in, lent a little bit on Chloe Kelly, fell into Kim Little, and then the cheek of Katie McCabe to just lift the ball over the two of them on the floor.
Over them,
only Katie McCabe does that, right? Only Katie McCabe.
I mean, it's like she can get away with it.
I don't know what you felt in that situation, because I still felt Manchester City had enough bodies behind the ball to recover that situation. I don't know how you felt about that.
Yeah, of course, it happens in phases, doesn't it? That's the first phase. You lose the ball for whatever reason. You don't get the foul. The rest of the team cannot switch off. The rest defence has to be alert to the next problem, the next danger. And they weren't, everyone was kind of like reactive. They allowed Arsenal to take control in that moment. They were able to get the ball out wide and then, find a way into the box. And they still had opportunities to squeeze and get pressure and blocks and, on shots and stuff. But they just, it's like they almost expected a decision to come their way, and it didn't. And then they were all, chasing their tails a little bit.
Neat. We have to talk about these chances that Blackstenius and Russo, in terms of the game plan and getting in those positions that they had within the game, because for me, both of those players, there should have been 3 clear goals there. The opportunities they got, the long ball over the top, and then literally clear through one-on-one. The way they didn't exploit it, and also those kind of habits that Blackstenius is continuing into this season, that we've had those frustrations with her last year in terms of, if you are going to compete and win the league, like Arsenal are challenging for, these are chances surely you have to put to bed.
Well, there's a couple of things that came to my mind, Farah, and one of those things is she was the right person to execute the game plan that Arsenal wanted. She's good at exploiting space. She was able to do that in several situations. She lacked composure in those moments, like you said, that we've sort of habitually seen in the previous season. So you almost like, how do you get that out of your muscle memory to find more composure? And on that first chance, I know she tried to round Yamashita, and it hits the post. But I was thinking, she's got to take that on the volley. The Man City goalkeeper is well out of her, goal, has given her the space. Has literally gone, here's the space, put it there, and you just, it's decision making as well. But it also makes me wonder. We've both been players in teams where, you focus on certain aspects of the game, whether that's finishing, defending, whatever it is. How much finishing are they doing maybe consistently that is under pressure? Because I remember playing in clubs where you do a lot of unopposed finishing, and it's more about technique and how much that might make a difference as well. But the last thing I want to say is they'll never, I feel like, get a better chance to meet a Man City team that have played this poorly and create those opportunities to score and not take them.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, that in terms of, you talk about those finishes, very, very, very frustrating. And for me, I find with Blackstenius, I don't know if you agree or not, is that the difficult chances, the ones you don't expect her to score, she scores. And it's these, as you mentioned there, these simple chances that, the goal's open, you've got a lot of time to think, you don't seem to be able to execute. I mean, Russo was the same. We know that Man City goalkeeper likes to play with that high line anyway. That's a part of their game plan and their building possession. So you mentioned there could have been certainly a lot more goals. But who do you think goes away then from the game the happier, given 1, the performance, and 2, the result? Because I reckon we might have a different opinion of this.
Oh, okay. I actually think Man City will be the happier. Yeah. They're away from home, number one. Playing on a big pitch, in front of the home crowd for Arsenal, and it's, like I said, the worst I've ever seen them play. So for them to find a way and still come out with a draw, you as a manager, you've got to be pleased with that and go, you know what, it wasn't our day today, went 100%, but our 75% or whatever,
Mm.
we were still able to get something against a very good team.
Yeah, I thought you were going to say Arsenal just because I know that you feel like City have a better chance this year of winning the league. But I would agree. I think given the performance of Manchester City, to rob a point really, given the chances, it should have been an Arsenal victory. I would agree that. I mean, I did hear Gareth Taylor's interview after the game, and he obviously felt the goal should have been disallowed for Arsenal, and he thought it was offside as well, Ford's goal, which is interesting. I don't think he'd have seen it back before that interview, but yeah, I think Manchester City will go away from this happy with the point against a top team with a bad performance. So yeah, we're talking of top three. We obviously had our predictions before the season, and we'll talk about them and see if they've changed at the end of the pod. But another team, Chelsea, they played on Friday night at home to Aston Villa. I was at the game. Obviously, they won 1-0. What did you make of that game? Because that was an interesting one for me.
Oh, I thought it was a great game. Obviously, both my former clubs, so it was nice. I felt that Villa, Aston Villa started the game a bit more nervy, first 15, because actually Chelsea were able to sort of penetrate through them quite easily and create chances. But I think they found a way to hold their nerve and just stay in it. And that was partly due to Chelsea missing chances as well. That allows you to stay within the game. But overall, I felt they gave a good account of themselves. And it was nice to see what the new manager, Robert De Paul, is trying to implement in the team. Yeah. And I think they would have felt that it was really positive for them because it's a free hit. They're not expected to get necessarily a result against Chelsea, but to show that they can compete will just allow them to build confidence further down the season.
Yeah, definitely. I know it's the old cliche of a game of two halves, but for sure it was that because Chelsea absolutely dominated that first half against Aston Villa. Aston Villa had a couple of chances, one from a corner, but in terms of Chelsea, I felt like they were different to what we're used to seeing with Emma Hayes. I know people said, it's quite similar. I thought they were quite direct in wide areas. I like the freedom that Brighton had. Obviously, we're so used to seeing her play off that left-hand side, and she played kind of that more central 10 role. And kind of roamed out to the left as and when she felt necessary, but she had a couple of chances herself. And I think the interesting thing about this Chelsea team is Bompastor's interview before the game, and they asked her what they was expecting, and her response was, "It's about winning. How we do that is, the result is the most important. It's a difficult league to play in, and it's about the result." And I felt like, given their first half performance, they really suffered in the second half. Aston Villa made a few changes. I think changes that actually helped them. I felt like Darley, when she started out on that left-hand side in the first half, although most of Villa's success did come down their left through Darley, I felt like she was wasted out on the flank. And when she become more central and closer to Rachel Daly, I felt like that's when they obviously hurt Chelsea a lot more. And they created numerous chances. But again, I feel like Chelsea are that team, and this is why I always say that they're probably most likely to win the league, is that in those moments they're able to suffer, and they suffered a lot in that second half. I mean, even when they committed bodies forward, one or two got into the box in the opposition's box. They wasn't in the second half, putting bodies into the box to try and get another goal. They were quite happy with that 1-0, and as I said, defending Aston Villa's attacks. I don't know if you've seen that or you felt that.
Yeah, I feel that it shows the leadership they have in their team and the amount of players that can cope, like you said, with suffering and being under pressure. However long that happens in the phase of play, they were able to ride it out, and show that character because, 1-0, it's easy then to start being really negative, obviously dropping really low, which at times they had to do. But then you start making mistakes because you're thinking about, don't want to make a mistake, don't want to concede chances, all those things. But they were able to do that. And like you said about the sort of tactical changes or differences under Bompastor is, I like the fact that she recognizes the strengths that the players that she's brought into the squad bring. So let's adapt to them as well. The fact that you said Brighton comes in more centrally, so does Ritin Kanarid, who we've been used to seeing occupy more that wide right, come more centrally. They're playing a bit closer, and suddenly you can kind of create some interesting boxy shapes, in the midfield connecting to the forward line. But who's better at going forward than any other fullback in the world Lucy Bronze,
Yeah.
right? So you're creating
Yeah.
space for her to do that. But the payoff of that is when you've got high fullbacks or fullbacks that like to get forward, is of course you're going to leave space. And
Yeah.
that was a space that Villa at times was able to exploit. And I thought Chastity Grant, the Dutch player on the right-hand side, was really effective for them too, because what I like is that she's so direct, she's so positive, she always wants to commit players, and then you force defenders in the box to have to make a decision, right? Am I going to tackle you? Am I going to stay on my feet?
Yeah.
That's when they're able to create more set piece opportunities like corners. So for me, that was a positive about Villa too. And obviously, like you say, someone connecting with Rachel Daly a bit closer.
Yeah, they definitely needed that.
Yeah,
But you
they
know what?
struggled with.
They did, but I mean, you looked at their bench, and I mean, they have numbers in attack that they can change the game with, and I think that that's a positive. When you think about game changers, and maybe in the past they probably haven't had that where they can bring somebody, a player into the game to change it, and I felt Villa did that positively. I have to give a mention. I thought Jordan Nobbs. I don't know what you thought of her performance, but I actually thought she was very good and kind of seemed a little bit refreshed. Last season, in and out of the team, didn't get that regular spot, but she looks like somebody that's come back after pre-season and looks, sharp.
Yeah, I thought Jordan looks dynamic. She is always a busy player in the midfield that does both sides of the role, whether that's attacking or defending. But why I think she looks sharp is because I feel under Robert DePaul, this team has clarity. Like they understand exactly what they're trying to do. What are we trying to do in build? What are we trying to do in the middle phase of the pitch, and what we're trying to do in the final third. And when you have that, players feel more assured, but they understand everybody else. Where am I expecting my teammates to be? How can I connect? So I thought she had a lot more influence in the game in the way that we know Jordan Nobbs can do, and we've seen time and time again.
Well, I think some of the takeaways, I think Villa looks strong. We asked questions before with all the new signings, how are they going to look? I actually thought D'Angelo, obviously in goal. I think they're back four. Maritz, fullback, with the experience that brings, obviously Anna Patton, Turner, and then the young kid, the Spanish kid, Thomas, that's it. Thought she was unbelievable. So I think the balance of that back four now, which was something I felt certainly last season wasn't there for them. They wasn't as solid as they looked. Of course, they'd be disappointed with the goal, but it was a worldy goal from Canarad. Is that right?
Canarad, yeah.
It was in terms of the goal was weren't a defensive mistake. So I think in terms of the positives that Villa can take from that performance is that actually we restricted Chelsea to very few clear-cut chances. We were solid, and we also created chances against the league champions. So I think they'll be an interesting one to watch certainly this season. But we'll move on to another team that obviously made lots of changes, brought in a new manager towards the end of last season, and obviously made a lot of changes within the squad. Brighton, they kicked off at 12:30 on Saturday. I was obviously excited to see how Frank Kirby got on within that game. They were playing at home to Everton. I mean, 4-0 they come out winners in that game. What did you make of that game?
Yeah, I just, I was excited, obviously, like everybody else, to see how Brighton were going to set up and what personnel were going to play. And obviously, during the transfer window, we talked a lot about Frank Kirby and Nikita Paris, for example, joined the team. So we knew their attack would be more threatening this season. But wow, Kiko Seite, what a player. Unreal. Like Fara, can you think of a better debut? Have you seen one?
Look, you know what? I haven't. And you know what? I mean, partly, look, I really liked watching her. I thought she was very front-footed. I thought in terms of like her understanding of positioning to get herself into the box, we can talk about her first goal. And I think that's just pure quality in terms of pinching the ball and kind of recognising the keeper off the line to dink it. The second goal, her timing from the back post, obviously you see the build-up, the transition. It goes down the left, and it's just the way she times her run from right to central of the goal to obviously get that diving header, which other players would already arrive early before the ball's in the box. She timed it beautifully to get that diving header. And then talk about a bit of confidence. Her third goal, I mean, I wasn't expecting. I was thinking, where's her third goal come from? And she just hit from out. I mean, I don't know what was on the ball or in her boot that just swerved into the top corner. I mean, I don't think there was a keeper that was going to stop that. But yeah, I mean, she looked bright. She looked bright. And obviously, I think once they get up and running and the likes of Frank Kirby, alongside her, they're kind of that intelligence in terms of that connection. I think the longer they play together, the more exciting that will get. But I also think Vicky Losada, when you have a player with that kind of control in the midfield behind you that can give you the ball early in those positions, I think it's a massive advantage. And I think, Brighton have that. Sometimes you have them deep line midfielders that actually can't see those early passes through the lines. Well, I think in a player like Vicky Losada, if they can keep her fit, they certainly are going to look frightening in that attacking area.
No, definitely. I think their ability to transition from defence to attack quickly comes because of the intelligence of a player like Vicky Losada, but also the intensity, the speed they were playing at was just so much more fluid and dynamic, And the main difference for Brighton this season is that when opposition start profiling them, they're going to be worrying about their threats.
Yeah,
I think in previous seasons, they probably some teams are probably not as concerned about their attacking front line, but now they're going to be like, okay, how do we stop that? Which also takes a bit of pressure off their defensive players, who I thought also did well. I thought Maria Thoris-Dottir did well to sort of nullify the things that Everton were trying to do in their third as well.
Yeah, I mean, Everton, my former team, and they frustrate the life out of me. They've frustrated the life out of me for the last few seasons now. Now, I don't know what you thought of their performance, and I think if they continue to play in that manner they did against Brighton, which is similar mistakes to what they made last year, I think they're in a lot of trouble because playing out for the back with players that aren't comfortable, playing possession-based football across in your defending third without any kind of real purpose, which is what possession is about, probing to kind of penetrate. I feel like that far too often, Everton, they play possession-based football without kind of penetrating that. And they obviously got caught for the first goal with that. And I think it was the fourth goal. The fourth goal that they're in possession across the back line. The fullback gets high and wide without controlled possession. There's a turnover, then they're backpedaling. And then obviously the goal comes from that. But I don't know what you make of Everton, but for me, something has to change there because the style what they're trying to adopt in terms of playing with the ball, very risky in their deep line, it is not working for them.
No, I agree with you, Farah. I think they've just continued the trend from last season. Whatever Sorensen was trying to implement in terms of playing philosophy into the team, he's still being consistent with, but it's still consistently given them negative outcomes. So I feel like at some point, that's when you have to adapt as well. And that's my worry for Everton is, can they adapt? Can they change that DNA? And also for those players who he's now trying to instill, possess out the back line and build under pressure.
Yeah.
Well, you've been working on that for, since last season.
Yeah.
So if they start to try and move out into something else, how hard it is to shift the mindset and players to do something different. But I agree. I just think, you can't be building out of your back when you don't have control in your structure.
Yeah.
Like you got backs disconnecting really high, not thinking, oh, what if the danger? Let me just be close enough to connect. And teams like that will punish you. And that's what they did. And, in all fairness to them, I think we have to give them some context. Obviously, they spend the least amount of money in the WSL on their squad. They've had kind of those challenges. So they haven't necessarily been able to...
I get that, but they probably spent quite a bit this season before in terms of trying to build. So they probably bought, if you think of last season, they bought in quite a few players to the squad. So they probably did their business last year. So as a club, they're probably thinking, well, actually, we spent this amount of money. Your league position wasn't good enough last year. Like, you're asking for more and some improvements. You've pretty much spent your budget in your first season in terms of personnel you've brought in, trying to create this team that, Sorensen wanted, and it kind of hasn't worked. So they've only had, I agree, they've got a small budget to bring in a couple of players, but they haven't lost many. They haven't lost many of their squad, and sometimes when you lose a lot of your squad, you're kind of trying to replace, and that's what we've seen with obviously Villa and obviously Brighton. But Everton haven't lost a lot of players to have to kind of fill those spaces. I just feel like the recruitment
but I've always felt that they have defied the odds a little bit. Like even their league position last season, they had loanees come before Aggie Beaver-Jones come in, score goals, and Jess Part come in and have major impacts for the team. So I'm sure you were just about to say about recruitment. It is a case of whether the recruitment is been up to the levels they need to make them really competitive.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I hear that, but I do think they have some good, they did bring in some good signings. But yeah, I just think, I don't know whether it's a style of play doesn't suit the players. I don't know what it is, but yeah, I think they've got a long season ahead if they don't try and adapt. Just before we finish up on the kind of roundup, there was obviously Manchester United come out 3-0 winners in that game against West Ham. I don't know what you take from that game, but the celebration, I think, for their second goal, and obviously we know the passing of Ella Toone. I just thought the way they celebrated with her must have been, one, very difficult for her to participate in that game, given the situation and what she's gone through lately. But I thought the celebration was, it showed something about them as a team, a collective. I don't know what you felt on that.
For me, obviously, I just think incredibly sad news for Ella Toone and her family and her friends, and everyone connected to them, because, I can't imagine, having a loss like that, and playing so soon after such tragic news as well. And I think the fact that, the bravery and courage she showed to play, and her teammates getting around her and supporting her, I think that also shows the beauty of football and why all of us collectively love it, is because of those bonds and you build around the people who experience some of those things with you. And honestly, I just think, obviously we send our condolences to her, her family,
Sure.
and all that knew her father as well. And we just wish her the very, very best during what we can imagine is a difficult time.
For sure. WSL Barclays deal, Anita. I mean, an historic moment for women's football. I think it's a 3-year agreement has been reached with Barclays to remain title sponsors of the Women's Super League and Women's Championship. The deal is understood to be in the region of 15 million a year, double the previous agreement, which runs out at the end of the season. We constantly talk about the sustainability of the women's game and the need for increased investment and long-term partnership. Do you think this really does accelerate the game?
Well, I think investment is fundamentally needed to keep pushing it forward. Obviously, with keeping sustainability in mind. I think, of course, it's a landmark deal, which is great and should be celebrated, because it's going to help support grassroots football all the way to the elite level. What I think is great is that Barclays have shown that commitment and have had the vision to support women's football, beyond this time. But fundamentally, yes, it should be doubled.
Yeah,
It's my opinion. Of course, it should be doubled. They should be getting this investment. I want to salute them for that, but at the same time, it should be happening, because I think we've both been in the game long enough to have known the value of women's football and women's sport in general. So, I think it's great that they've shown that, like I said, commitment. But now it's a case of where, obviously, all this investment, where it's going, and actually how is it going to support sort of the growing infrastructure and demands of the game today.
Yeah, no, I would agree. I mean, look, Barclays are obviously leading the way again, and we've kind of seen that commitment and their investment. But as you mentioned there, I'm somebody that we need the game to be sustainable. Where is this investment going? And I'm somebody that is really hot on our academies and, or Centre of Excellence, RTCs, the name changes every year. But in terms of our youth development within the professional structure, I think that's something that, I'm keen on improving in terms of the contact time that they have in that elite environment. They're still at, twice a week, which for me, in terms of we are to make our product better, if we're still giving, academy kids only 2 sessions a week of 2 hours per session, it's still not enough if you want to improve the game and have that kind of longevity. But yeah, I think the investment, although we want it at the top, and it'll be heavily top heavy, but I think that improvement at grassroots and kind of giving opportunity and making it more accessible is something that I'm hopeful for. That's what we need. We need opportunities for the kids to play. And then obviously the sustainability, we need our game to be sustainable. And obviously with this investment, certainly helps contribute towards that.
Well, if we're talking about a mountain peak, then we need the foundation to be strong, right? And if the base ain't strong, the peak ain't going to survive. So fundamentally, everything you're saying, that's what it is. It's making sure that we recognize that the only reason we have an elite level of the game and is because we have to be able to funnel through talent and have a wide pool of talent. And the only way we get that, we support them in the right way. And that's accessibility, that's facilities, that's coaching, that's all the rest of it, has to be up to those levels as well.
Yeah, so we're hopeful of that. But as I say, breaking news and a very good investment and maybe a little bit long overdue. We'd probably, some of us would say, but it's there, and I'm excited for the future of the game. But we'll look forward now to game 2 this up and coming weekend. So we've got Crystal Palace that take on Chelsea, Manchester City take on Brighton at home, Everton, Man United, West Ham against Liverpool, Leicester, Arsenal, and Villa, Spurs. What's your kind of pick of the weekend from those games? Which one are you most looking forward to watching?
Oh, wow. What am I? Do you know what? I think I'm most looking forward to. I have to say, there's probably 2 games I'm most looking forward to, and that is City Brighton, Man City Brighton, and Aston Villa Spurs.
Yeah, I think they're the 2 standout games. Given the opening day performances, I think, they would have been certainly my pick of the bunch. I think Crystal Palace at home to Chelsea, tough task. I think we could agree on that. But Manchester City, I think obviously Manchester City sloppy start, but they obviously got a point, and Brighton's bright start kind of makes for a good matchup there, and kind of see where Brighton are at. I think obviously Everton a poor start for them. Man United, out the blocks, flying. I think that's a game that Everton will find difficult. Will have to recover from that opening day, but Manchester United go into that game, bags of confidence. West Ham, I mean, I don't know what you make of them but they obviously take on Liverpool at home. I expect a Liverpool win.
I expect Liverpool win. I feel like West Ham are going to struggle, and we've said that before on the previous pods.
Yeah.
I just think even the goals they conceded on the weekend, just sloppy. Defensively.
Playing out from the back. Why do teams keep doing and playing the same way and making the same mistakes and finding themselves being that vulnerable? Most opportunities of playing out. It definitely blows my mind. Leicester, they had a good result at Liverpool, 1-1. How do you see them up against Arsenal? They seem to be the bogey team for some of these top teams, Leicester, or they were last season for sure. They're obviously under new management.
Under new management, I think you know the manager, right, quite well, and she's going to try and impart a new, or maybe elevate what they had achieved last season, because they had a lot of difficult challenges, but there was a lot of strong performances from them and lots to be sort of happy about. I think they were a quite young team last season, so they kind of played with this kind of belief, in transition moments especially, they look quite dangerous. So I'm interested to see kind of how they shape up this season, but I think they'll be in a good position this season for sure.
And then Villa Spurs, I mean, this one excites me just because how Villa performed on the opening day, and then obviously Spurs got a big win, a couple of goals there. So I don't know, this one excites me because if we're talking top 6, I think if we spoke at the beginning of the season, these probably 2 of the teams that we would have expected to be fighting for kind of that top 6 position. So this one is a tasty one for me.
100%. 100%. But I really respect what Robert Villaharm has done at Tottenham, in the playing style and the bravery that's instilled in those players. So I think both teams are kind of at that kind of level at the moment. So I'll be interested to see if they both play expansive football, if they're going to be slightly more pragmatic because they know these are the games that they should or try to pick up points from.
Yeah, I think sometimes that's a difficulty, isn't it? You kind of know that these are the teams that, you should be beating or want to be beating if you want to be there or thereabouts. But then you kind of have those cagey kind of openings to the game. But yeah, definitely one I'm looking forward to. So Neats, we've got a couple of fans' questions. The first one, who had the most impressive debut this weekend? I think we've said it.
I think Kiko Seite
in the podcast. I don't think in terms of individual performances, there's only
she
one,
owns
right?
This weekend. She owns this weekend.
Kiko's but in terms of teams then, who had the most impressive team performance, would you say, over the weekend?
Oh, that's a good question.
I think Arsenal.
I mean, Arsenal. I think, yeah, I think you'd have to say Arsenal. You
Yeah.
know, because I don't think any one of us expected them, especially off their midweek Champions League
Defeat.
performance and result, to play the way they did against Man City.
Yeah.
You know,
You know,
for sure.
it's annoying, isn't it? Because we say surprise, but with the caliber of player they have, right, it shouldn't be a surprise. But I think because they're
Yeah,
so inconsistent in terms of kind of that performance, which you heard Jonas speak after the game about the levels and sometimes not getting to those levels they should be. I think that's why it
yeah.
was more of a surprise, because we know they're capable of that, but it's just not on a consistent basis. So yeah, they were definitely the standout team for me. The second question is, after this first game week, have your top 3 predictions changed, or is it too early to say? That is a very good question.
That is a very good question. What are you saying? What are you saying? What are you thinking?
You know what? Just my stubbornness is going to tell me I'm not going to change. But if Arsenal can deliver those performances consistently, and I think, you know, it's way too early to say. Obviously, we're going based off of last season and kind of the players that have been brought in this season. That was what my opinions of the top 3 were based on. But I think if Arsenal can match that performance more consistently throughout the season, I think come Christmas I might be saying something different.
Yeah, and I think that's fair enough. I mean, it's literally match day 1, so
Yeah.
a lot can change. But I mean, I'm a bit stubborn too, and I think I don't want to go off just one performance or one result at the start of the season to change my mind. Obviously, I said Man City at the top, Chelsea, Arsenal. Asked me in week 4. I think that could change,
Yeah.
but currently, I'm going to stick with that, and I agree with your points. I think it's about consistency. I mean, the main threat I do think is Chelsea. My mind is still going. Chelsea could be, remain as champions just because of just the way they are, the way they find a way to win.
Yeah,
But yeah, I think Arsenal, they have the depth, they have the quality.
for sure.
Just got to just be consistent.
So thanks for your questions, brilliant questions, and thanks for listening to BBB. Remember, subscribe, like, and comment, and we'd love to hear from you on certain topics, player insights, anything you want to hear from myself and Anita. We're open to discussing. Just send your questions in, and we'll make sure that we respond. But thanks again for listening. Don't forget, subscribe, like, and comment. Thanks, Anita. Hope you enjoyed your
Thank
second
you.
podcast.
Loved every minute. Can't wait till next week.